Welcome to the show, Ibidation Sports Talk, rolling your way on a Tuesday. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. You're all cubbed out there. It looks like.
Yeah, that was the theme today. Didn't want to wear any of my Cowboys stuff, and I wore Notre
Who
Dame
can
stuff
blame you?
yesterday. So
Who can blame you? Yep.
that's where I'm at.
Who can blame you one bit? Well, we're going to cover a lot of Army today with Notre Dame, of course, an unbeaten Army going head to head at Yankee Stadium. Did you see the unveil last night that Army did for their Army Navy games? They're honoring the 101st Airborne for their defensive Bastogne, Battle of the Bulge, World War II. Did you see?
Yeah, I did see those. I think they look pretty sweet, actually. But I thought it was pretty funny that they did it the week that they're not playing them yet. I was like, why do this?
It kind of seemed bizarre. Like, why are you?
I would
why are you
promote
doing
more so
this
that you're
now? Why don't
playing
you?
in Yankee
Yeah.
Stadium.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little surprised by that as well. It's like we're undefeated. We're playing Notre Dame. We're unveiling our commemorative uniforms for the Army Navy. I mean, they look really cool. Like the whole. And did you watch the video of the whole
Yeah.
deal by any chance? So, like the thing, General McAuliffe with nuts. When the German commander asked for the surrender of the U.S. forces who were encircled there in Bastogne in the Ardennes, and General McAuliffe replied, "Nuts!" Well, apparently it says Army on the back with the dashes and the exclamation point, and that's kind of what that commemorates. So that's kind of a cool little touch, and of course, it's got Bastogne, and it's got the like the all the logos and all that stuff. So really, really cool little thing that they're doing. Two of your great grandfathers were served at the Battle of the Bulge around Bastogne. Did you know that?
I did know that, and I
They
figured
weren't in the
that
101st, but they were at Bastogne at the Battle of the Bulge.
I figured you and my grandpa would appreciate those jerseys more than I would. But I know what they signify.
Yeah. I know. I knew you would know what they signify, but so cool stuff. Again, I wonder, are they just going to wear their regular uniform this week? Notre Dame's not going to have the regular uniform.
Shamrock series.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. We'll see what people think of those. If they didn't like the blue jerseys with the white pants against Georgia Tech a few weeks back. So, all right. Well, we're going to jump into Army Deep here in a second, but I do want to tell you, of course, about my bookie, the one book that's got your back with no fluff, no second guessing, and just straight up action with you in total control. At my bookie, it's never about guessing. It's about giving you the edge so that every bet you place comes with confidence and a plan. If you know football and you love to win, then my bookie was made for you. And if you're new to the game, here's where to start. Take our promo code IRISH, and it'll double your bankroll with a 100% deposit bonus right from the jump. That's more money, more power to make winning plays. So bet anything, anytime, from anywhere with my bookie, the sports book that gives you control and rewards for every moment of play. Well, they are. What's that?
I said I used my bookie last night to win the easiest touchdown. I just did Joe Mixon straight touchdown and won me. That was the only bet I placed last night. I won some good money off. I knew Joe Mixon was scoring last night.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Swiss cheese defense.
I was going up against. It came down to the guy I was playing against in fantasy football had Joe Mixon, and I knew that I was going to lose. I knew I needed a little bit bigger. I needed 140 points, and that's what I was thinking is the late Sunday afternoon games, like as I was getting ready to get on the plane to fly back from Pennsylvania. I'm like, I need something from DeAndre Hopkins here. I just, I need a little bit more. Didn't quite get it, though. So
I haven't told you yet. I lost in one of my fantasy football leagues. All the guy had left was the Texans defense, and I lost by 1 point. And the Texans defense had an interception, a fumble recovery, a touchdown, 5 sacks. All of it went into it. And as soon as they got that strip sack for a touchdown last night, I was like, well, that's probably the end of my time here. And
and it was
one sack later, there I was. So Houston scoring 18 points on defense last night beat me in fantasy football. So
singes the nostrils. All right. Oh, it always hurts. It always hurts. All right. Well, they're not, no commemoration of, something as important as the Battle of the Bulge this weekend, but it is obviously the 100-year anniversary of the Four Horsemen, Stoll, Dreher, Miller, Crowley, and Layden. These two teams, I mean, this is pretty historic as college football became more modern, when things changed really in the 50s and especially in the 60s. That's kind of when this series went away, and Notre Dame and Army have just kind of played sporadically over the years. But I mean, they played every year from 1913 to 1922 at West Point. And then Yankee Stadium is built in 1923. They go to Brooklyn that year. And then the next year, 1924, the year after Yankee Stadium is built, they go to the Bronx and they play in Yankee Stadium. Interestingly, both the LA Coliseum and Yankee Stadium built in 1923. And then Notre Dame played in both of those facilities against USC and Army in 1924, the following year. So, they're getting back together this weekend. And Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about facing Army and the history of it, that kind of comes with it.
Oh, it's an honor. I remember when Jack Swarbrick, told me that this was going to be our Shamrock Series game for this year. The first thought was Navy and Army in the same year. Come on, Jack. And then he told me why. And, Jack was such an innovative mind. He never wanted to have a Shamrock Series game just to have it. But he said, what better Shamrock Series opportunity to have a game in New York City versus Army 100 years later after the Four Horsemen were named. And I think it's a great opportunity. Just doing my history, my research on who the Four Horsemen were. I know one of them's from Massillon, which is a shout out to my wife. She's a Massillon Tiger, and I know two of them for Ohio. So, there's a little bit of connection there with the Four Horsemen. But it's an amazing opportunity to play a great program that has a lot of history and is a top 25 program. It's going to be a great challenge on Saturday night.
Well, it's obvious that Tommy's not here, because as soon as Marcus Freeman said Massillon, that Tommy would have been sounding off. But Harry Stoll, Dreher, by the way, the Four Horsemen, who's from Massillon, Ohio. So, Jess, what did you think when you heard that Notre Dame was going to play Army this year, and what do you think about it now?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season, it was kind of a lot of what Marcus Freeman was saying. It was like, we got to play two of the academies.
Yeah,
both of these teams are going to run triple option. I think that's the tougher part, is the toll that it takes on your body. Even if you play well and win, still very physical games. You sometimes, wonder if your team is going to be able to bounce back after the triple option weeks and play well. So, like, even if Notre Dame wins, how do they perform against USC going out to LA the week after? I think that's some of the stuff that's taken into consideration. But on the flip side, again, kind of echoing what Marcus Freeman was saying, is you respect the history side of things. You understand why they're doing it. And I think it makes it more fun that Notre Dame adds, that they're unveiling the Shamrock Series uniforms, that they're playing inside Yankee Stadium. It kind of dresses the game up for maybe some of the fans who get a little bit frustrated about, why do we have to play the academies? Why do we have to play two in the same season? And that's that sort of argument. So I look forward to the games. I think you hit the lottery this season with Navy and Army both being ranked teams going into the matchup. Like, that is
absolutely.
That is absolute, like, hit the jackpot twice, right? And so I think this season it feels even better for that reason as well. You when you played Navy, they were undefeated and ranked, and it's not your fault kind of that they went on the down spiral, I guess, after. And
it might be Notre Dame's fault. Maybe they started it.
Well, then it's not your fault too that Army is undefeated, and yes, do they have one of the worst schedules in the country? Sure, but it's still a resume builder. And on the flip side, if Army were to beat Notre Dame, they would likely catapult, towards the top 15 rankings and maybe even be the group of 5 winner to come out at that point. So, there's still a lot of implications for Army. Notre Dame should handle business, but it's a fun game. And I look forward to it for all of the stuff that I was kind of just talking about.
Bottom line is, just what you said. Initial thoughts, Army, yeah. And then it's like, okay, Yankee Stadium. Well, that's kind of cool. And obviously they had to do it because of the whole Miami University, the Miami Hurricanes scheduling snafu. Miami,
right.
For people maybe who have forgotten, Miami was supposed to be on the schedule this year. Just a sec. Sorry, I've got a little bit of just a cruddy kind of thing in my head the last couple of days.
So do I.
So Miami was supposed to be there. They replace it with Army. Miami overscheduled, and so that's gonna, Notre Dame's gonna get them up here in a couple of years, actually. So you get that, and then it's like, all right, Shamrock Series, and you check out the Shamrock Series uniforms. Wasn't thrilled about those when I first saw them, but then when they kind of describe it, and again, there's like, the whole gray that they're using, the blue gray, the blue-gray October sky kind of theme that they're going with these uniforms. And again, the 100-year anniversary of the Four Horsemen. It's actually a pretty cool deal that they're doing. And then just a massive bonus, like you said, it's like now, like when you're looking at Notre Dame's schedule, especially at the start of the season, it's like, where's the meat? And everybody thought that it was going to be Florida State and Texas A&M.
USC.
And it's turned out to be the 2 service academies in Texas A&M, that have really provide. Yeah, I mean, USC was supposed to be better at the start of the season as well. So big difference. So, I mean, it's turned out to be very nice that Notre Dame in late October and now mid-November got Army and Navy both undefeated and ranked at the time that they played them. So very beneficial. Kyle Wade. I don't know if this is a challenge or if he's just throwing his own Russian knowledge out there. He says, Kak dela, Tavarish, Sean. How are things going, comrade Sean, is what Kyle is throwing in there. Little Ruski in the chat tonight.
You still remember all that?
I mean, that's
easy.
That's fairly basic. I mean, that was literally
phrase.
Probably the first month of 12 months of very, very basic stuff. So all right. It is another option team, Army. As we saw, Navy had some wrinkles to their offense this season, and Marcus Freeman talking this week about how this is a different option than the one Navy is running.
I met with the defensive staff, and the first thing we said is the biggest mistake we can make is think this is Navy 2.0. It's not. It's a different offense. They do some different things. They got a different identity and present a different challenge. Yes, it's still a version of the triple option, which you see with some of the military schools, but they run it with different personnel. But they're led to me by their O-line. They come off the ball. They're physical. They're bigger than what you usually see when you play academy schools. But it's going to be a great challenge on all 3 phases. They're aggressive in the special team. I think they think since 2020 they blocked more kicks than anybody else in FBS. And so all 3 phases present some issues that we have to be prepared for.
There's the old mute button. They've been firing all cylinders for the most part. I don't want to be coughing and hacking while things are going off. So I've been muting myself off and on a couple of times. But I don't know, Jess, do you want to throw up some whiteboard right now? You want to talk a little bit about Bryson Daly, the quarterback, first before we get into the whiteboard? What do you want to do?
I think if you give a nice intro to Mr. Daly, it would kind of back up, I think, where this whiteboard is largely headed, because I think he is the most central figure of their offense. And when talking about a difference, I think what they do with him and how he runs the ball is ultimately the difference. So why don't you get into that a little bit?
And I mean, he will throw, but like Navy throws about twice as much as Army. Like Blake Horvath, the Navy quarterback, has 118 attempts. He's 69 of 118 for over 1,100 yards. Daly, 29 of 51 for 644. And, like, kind of like what you
throw
expect.
when they have to. It's like third and long.
Right. They throw much more. Now they'll try to, just like Navy, they'll try to catch you off guard and stuff like that. But to me, like watching them, he looks like an option quarterback, the way he throws the ball. There's not a whole lot of skill, not a whole lot of precision to it. He's like, about a 56% completion percentage, that kind of stuff. They do line up, of course, in the wing tee, just as, what you would expect from an option offense and all that. I'll go ahead and I'll play this cut for Marcus Freeman about Bryson Daly, and then we'll talk about him a little bit.
I think he is, a guy that has experience. I know he missed 2 games ago, I think 2 weeks ago, but he's back from injury, makes really good decisions, can run the ball if he needs to, but also can throw it if he needs to. But what he does is run the offense efficiently, doesn't put him in bad positions, and he does a great job of taking care of the football.
All right, so there you go.
I fear there's going to be lots of commotion.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's already commotion. Henry threw me off there. Daly is fairly similar dimension to Blake Horvath. He's a little thicker. He's a little bit shorter. He's 6 foot 221, whereas Horvath, a little bit taller, 6'2", and right around 200 pounds. I don't know, again, he's going to throw a lot of his success that I've seen, kind of, looking at some of their film and stuff like that, is not necessarily traditional option stuff. It's like straight up quarterback ISO, QB follow, QB power, whatever you want to refer to it as. He just follows the fullback through a hole, and, they kind of let him do his thing. And again, he's got over 1,000 yards, so it's been very, very successful for him so far this year. They just kind of body up. Their offensive line just kind of bodies up, and they're able to move the other defensive line off the ball. I mean, it's been successful for who they've played, but let's be honest. They played Lehigh, Florida Atlantic, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, Alabama, Birmingham, East Carolina, Air Force, and North Texas. So I think that they have been able to be very physical with those teams so far.
Yeah, so a lot of you kind of got into the thing I was going to get into with this whiteboard a little bit is
do it.
They you know what? Why don't I just present my screen?
It's the beauty of the whiteboard, right?
Okay, bring that in, I guess, if you can.
All right.
Nice. Okay, so we are good to go. I finally got my work at home setup going, so it is in much better condition now. I should have no more issues. But the main thing that you have to look at in terms of differences between Navy and Army, I feel like Navy wanted more so of a balanced attack between attacking, downhill between the tackles, on the perimeter, and then incorporating some sort of passing game. I would say 80% of Army's offense is quarterback and fullback.
Yeah.
And I don't think – I think the thing that Marcus Freeman is saying that's going to be the biggest difference, I don't feel like Army's going to attack Notre Dame on the perimeter. Notre Dame has way too fast of athletes that can cover space, and watching some of, Army stuff on the perimeter, I don't think – They'll use it, but it won't be nearly as much as what I think they're going to do with the inside run. And then what you were talking about, just straight up QB power, QB ISO, fullback dive. I think they're going to try to abuse Notre Dame through the A's and B gaps, and then maybe expand to the perimeter and into the passing game. But I think that's where they're going to really try to exploit Notre Dame. And that's, again, the difference that I think Marcus Freeman was trying to tell his coaching staff is, we need to be ready for that kind of warfare, more so in the trenches, up front, very physical kind of football, not more so like Navy Now Navy wants to kind of spread you out a little bit, get you on the perimeter, get you in the passing game a little bit, get you into some RPO looks. I mean, Army's quarterback isn't going to pass the ball unless he absolutely needs to. Like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, maybe a 4th and 5, 4th and 6 if they want to keep the chains going. But I saw the drive I watched a majority of, they kept the ball for 14 minutes against North Texas.
Wow.
And went all the way down the field. It was like a 90-yard drive, and they had like at least 2 or 3 third downs. Like these
wasn't it like 20 plus plays or something like that?
Yes, and all of them start with this sort of now that we kind of have the precursor. I mean, they're going to run the traditional wing tee a lot. That doesn't mean that he'll still get in shotgun too. You know what I mean? He'll get back here, but it's the same principles at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if he's under shotgun, under center or in shotgun. The basis of this thing is fake fullback dive on every play. And then I would say majority of the time he's either following or running kind of a counter, and wherever he finds an opening, honestly, is I feel like where he's going most of the time. And again, they'll still kind of, bring these guys in motion and do the typical window dressing. But I still think that 70% of this, 80% of this offense is going to be between the tackles. And another thing to notice as well that I saw is they use different fullbacks as well. They have kind of what I would say more of a stockier fullback, and I think they have a guy who's more or less the guy that they want to actually run the ball when he's in at fullback. Yeah. I think his number is like 33 or something. He's just in there to lead block most of the time. He might get it on like a 2nd and 1, a 3rd and 1, a 4th and 1. But that guy's majority going to be in there just to be a lead blocker, in some sort of power scheme coming off the quarterback. And then when they have a number 6 in there, he's probably what I would say is their best runner outside of the quarterback. I think he runs the ball very well. He is a fullback by, where they put him in this offense, but he looks more like a running back, like a stockier kind of running back that they have play fullback. But, this fullback's going to put his hand in the dirt every time. They're going to be downhill and get on you. And this quarterback, I think he's going to be the difference maker of whether or not this is a long game for Notre Dame. If he keeps the ball, where is he going? Is he going A? Is he going B? He's got all these options. And I think that's what makes it so hard is I don't think it's predetermined. I think he hikes the ball, fakes the fullback dive, and he's like, well, where am I going to go run the ball? And that's ultimately where he goes. And again,
he makes the read, and that's what makes any option so successful is they're reading what the defense gives them. It's not predetermined.
And so I that's where I think the creativity from Al Golden would kind of have to come from is what are you doing with your front four and your internal linebackers to kind of mix up, what he's seeing in different gaps, right? Like you can't just put your nose or your 3-tech in the A gap every time. I think you have to kind of change up where these guys are coming from and how they're filling these interior gaps. I mean, we know that defensive line and linebackers are, fullback dive, right? And then if this quarterback breaks off to the perimeter, that's where you got a safety kind of coming downhill and helping on the quarterback. But if the quarterback stays in between the tackles, that's on the defensive line and the linebackers to kind of, figure out essentially. Anything that gets to the perimeter, that's when you'll involve kind of your safeties coming downhill, your corners coming, crashing down as well. But I just think this game's largely going to be predicated around their quarterback and a lot of just QB power and QB ISO.
No, I agree. I mean, based on everything that they've shown, what they've done this year, that's the majority of their offense. I mean, that's why he's, like Noah Short, he's one of their wings. He's got 11 catches this year. And then one of their wide receivers, Casey Reynolds, has 12 catches. And they both average over 23 yards per catch. Short averages 23.5 and Reynolds averages 27. So, again, they'll try to throw it over the top a little bit every now and then and kind of catch you napping. That's something that we talked about when we talked about Navy before about, when you do get caught napping and get your eyes peeking in the backfield and that kind of stuff. I mean, I think the key just because of the pure athleticism standpoint, Notre Dame's corners, Notre Dame's secondary, it's a complete mismatch in Notre Dame's favor, but they can't get sucked up and then, try to have to, make up that ground on the back end if Daly tries to throw over the top, which they've done a few times this year. What strikes me is Daly's longest run of the season is only 36 yards.
Well, he's not a fast guy. He
Yeah.
doesn't have breakaway speed, really.
Yeah. I mean, Horvath is faster, right?
Oh, 100. I'd say Horvath is faster and he's more athletic and more dynamic than what this quarterback is. This quarterback's just kind of like a battering ram.
He's just
kind
physical.
Yeah. He just gets behind his guys and throws his body kind of in there. And this is an interesting matchup too because of Howard Cross's health as well. Like Notre Dame, let's not forget Notre Dame is thin on the defensive line, right? A lot of younger talent, and that's not to say that they're not going to perform well, but this is a game where maybe lack of depth and experience amongst the defensive line can cause for a closer game than might be comfortable for a little bit, at least to start, because Notre Dame got very lucky against Navy that they started with all those turnovers. That doesn't usually happen. That you don't start to feel good about an academy team usually until the second half, barring a lot of first half turnovers. So I think Notre Dame cannot take for granted, what happened against Navy. It's going to be a more physical game. I think it's going to be more a controlled tempo game as well. Like when Army has the ball, they're going to hold on to that thing. They're going to get a couple first downs, but Notre Dame as well has to be deliberate with their drives as well. Like they can't have empty drives and missed opportunities that could potentially come back later in the game.
I mean, that's the key to the whole thing. You just, like if you're Army, if you're Navy with that offense, you can't get behind the chains. You can't get off schedule in terms of you're down in distance. If you're picking up 3 yards a pop in that option, you're feeling.
And they'll go for it on
good.
4th and 1.
Right. But Notre Dame's aspect is like you can't get behind in terms of, that's why things worked out so perfectly for the Irish against Navy. They got the ball first, went right down, scored a touchdown. The Navy fumbles the ball right away, something they hadn't done all year. Next thing you know, it's 14-0, and the whole complexion of the game has changed. So Notre Dame's offense just has to hold up its end of the deal. Is what it comes down to. They've got to be able to keep. Now, again, like this Army team is I do think it's going to be more physical than Navy was, but at the same time, again, it's like I look at who they played. I feel like it has been fairly easy for them to be pretty physical against the teams on their schedule, and just like the talent, the size, the athleticism mismatch that Notre Dame had against Navy, it's going to be there. It won't be maybe quite as large against Army as Navy, but there's still going to be a pretty big disparity, I think, between the two. I mean, do you agree with that based on everything that you've seen of them?
Yeah, I would I would agree too. Like I don't think it's just like overwhelming, Army is just going to control the line of scrimmage and stuff, but I mean, they're going to be bigger. They're going to be more physical. But it's like if Notre Dame just needs to play how they're supposed to, have a good week of preparation in terms of preparing for the triple option. And luckily for them, they've had 2 bye weeks before this, and that's something Marcus Freeman has talked about is finding ways to be productive on those bye weeks. And I know that they got in some triple option kind of homework during those times. So it's the shell of the thing is still the same. The grand scheme between Army and Navy is still the same. I just think that I think this bodes well because of, we're talking about academy schools, but their point of attack, I think, is a little bit different. Army's point of attack is downhill, between the tackles, mainly between the guards. I'd really say, if you want to get even more precise about it. And Navy's point of attack was this, kind of down the middle, on the perimeter, through the passing game. They had multiple kind of points of attacks that they were dynamic and good at. But Army, it's just their point of attack is going to be right down the middle. I don't like watching a lot of their kind of jet sweeps and options onto the perimeter. I just don't see them having guys with the athleticism and the speed to turn the corner on Notre Dame unless it's some sort of kind of trickery play where they've got the defense and linebackers' eyes, flow in one direction and kind of somehow they maybe hit you on like a reverse or something, maybe that's how they can secure the edge. But I just don't trust in their perimeter play. Their wide receivers, their wing backs being able to secure the edge against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, the biggest question is how big are those holes that Daly is trying to run through, and how quickly does Notre Dame close them up? Really, I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to me. I mean,
and you can't get lulled to sleep either, because I think they're going to try to force feed this thing down the middle, down your throat, and then also maybe try to hit you on something quick on the perimeter, just trying to catch you napping, essentially.
Right. And I mean, that's stuff that Navy tried as well. They just were not very successful in that game. And obviously the turnovers went a long way. And, Navy or Army rather, in terms of takeaways is fairly solid. Notre Dame has just been an exceptional team in terms of takeaways now this season. I think we went through some of the defensive rankings on yesterday's show, but Notre Dame tied for number 1 in the nation with 25 takeaways now this season. Army is number 54 with 14 takeaways, but their total defense is number 5. Are you done with the whiteboard? Should we take the whiteboard off? We'll talk just a little bit about their defense here for a second, or for a minute, or 2 or 3, or whatever happens to be. I mean, they've been a pretty good defense this season, and Marcus Freeman had a few thoughts on them, starting with kind of how they are against the run.
I think one is personnel. They got some good D linemen. They do a good job. They do a good job of simulating some pressures where you might be thinking a 5-man pressure's coming, a 6-man pressure's coming, and it ends up being 4 guys. And so they just do a good job of saying, we're not going to let you run the ball. And we got a mindset that, hey, we still want to run the ball. We got to find ways to get hats on hats. But the other thing I think they do is they move, right? Is they're not stagnant. They're not your typical just 3 down and they don't move. They're able to move the front and be aggressive. Change the leverage on you, which is a challenge. When you change the leverage on an offensive lineman post-snap, it creates some difficulties.
They are number 3 in the nation, rushing yards allowed at 82.6. Indiana, by the way, number 1 in the nation in terms of rush defense. But Army has the number 5 total defense, number 23 pass efficiency defense. Anything that stands out to you about Army's defense, Jess?
I guess what ultimately kind of stands out is, their ability to stop the run. I mean, where teams have kind of gotten them is in the passing game, but I don't think that that's something that, Notre Dame should ultimately get kind of spooked by. I honestly think it should be something that Notre Dame kind of looks. I'm going through all of their game logs right now very quickly here on the back end. I don't think they've had a 100-yard rusher. No one's rushed for over 100 yards on them this season, which is kind of crazy. I think the closest guy was Tulsa, and he had 17 carries for 82 yards. So they haven't had a 100-yard rusher this season. So, if I'm Notre Dame, I honestly kind of think of that as a challenge. I don't think it's something that Notre Dame needs to come out and say, oh, we can't run the ball, we have to beat you in the passing game. I still think Notre Dame can take this as a challenge and say, you know what, we can really challenge our run game and see if we can exert our dominance on a team that's good at stopping the run, a team that is, physical in the trenches, like we talked about, and then kind of work the pass off of that more or less. So, what also plays into this is the talent that Army has played as well. Like they obviously haven't played as a dynamic of a rushing attack of, Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, Riley Leonard. Like these are all very dynamic runners that they haven't gone against. So I'd like to see Notre Dame exert its will in that run game and really kind of prove, hey, like we can run on anyone. Like this isn't we're playing Purdue or whoever on crappy defense. We can run on just about anyone. And we can, open up our pass game as well once we establish the run game.
I mean, athletically, those 3 guys for Notre Dame, Leonard, Price, and Love, are going to be the 3 best athletes that Army has seen all season on the offensive side of the ball.
Oh, no doubt.
And when like you talk about challenging the perimeter, like them trying to challenge the perimeter of Notre Dame when they're on offense, whether it's the perimeter, like that's a place that I think Notre Dame can definitely win. I think that they can win between the tackles as well. But with guys like Love and Price coming out of the backfield, and even again like Riley Leonard with his not just skill but the speed that he has as well. I mean, we've seen it against he moves so effortlessly past everybody, and I think that is going to like Army is going to take notice of that very quickly, because like you remember when Notre Dame played Navy, their coach said after the game, it's like that's a team of NFL guys. Like he knew that they were in for something, from a physical and athletic standpoint when they played Notre Dame, and the score obviously showed that. And I just think that's going to catch Army's attention pretty quickly as well, that they haven't seen anything like that all season. I'm not saying it's going to be a cakewalk for Notre Dame, but I'm also just saying like there's a huge difference between anything that Army has played this season and Notre Dame. They haven't played a Power 4 team.
No, I agree. It's life is going to come at them fast on Saturday, and all we can do is hope that Notre Dame capitalizes on the situation. There should be no this is what I've seen, or what I've enjoyed most out of the last, however many weeks since NIU, is Marcus Freeman has been nothing but foot to neck the entire time, right? And that's what this game has to be, is you just have to come out here and physically exert your will the entire game and not feel bad about it at all. Don't let them up for air, and do everything possible. Because I think when you get out of that mindset and you get into that comfortability, and especially against a team like Army, Navy, who can really control the clock and potentially kind of take the ball out of your hands by just, them having the ball themselves, you can fall into that more lackadaisical kind of, it happened mindset, and then more of those compile. And that's when you get into the NIU side of things. And so I just think as long as Notre Dame comes out and keeps that kind of mentality of, we're here to exert our will the entire game, and we're not going to let you back up, that's ultimately what's going to have to. I don't think there's really an in between when you play these games. You're either going to blow out Army and do what you're supposed to, or it's going to be a really uncomfortable kind of one possession game like we've seen before in some of these academy games.
Right. Excuse me, exactly. And, just like Marcus Freeman, he said it yesterday, and he's been saying it for the last few weeks as well. He's talked about this is the Super Bowl. This is the Super Bowl, like in terms of mentality and preparation and those kind of things. It's like we have to take this like it's the Super Bowl, and that has to be the mentality. So I do feel like there's been a completely different shift of mindset that this team has had over the course of the season. We've talked about the lessons that they've learned from NIU. So Jeremy comes in. He's a little more polite than I think it was Troy last night. Who it was.
Yes, it was.
Do we think all the passes against Virginia was practice for what they've seen they can exploit with Army? Just wondering, because we were throwing a bit more, and we kind of touched on this a little bit.
Well, I think a big part of it in that game, Notre Dame, one of their biggest, I think, flaws in that Virginia game is they were getting behind the chains early. A lot of kind of 1st and 15s, 1st and 20, just kind of pre-snap penalties, holdings, false starts, illegal formations, stuff that drives Marcus Freeman crazy. And so I think that's, part of the reason why you saw a lot of the passing. And then, as well, I think you have to ultimately giveth, what the defense is taketh from you, like if they're going to take away Riley Leonard in that aspect of it, you can't just force feed him and just be like, what, Riley, like just go do that anyways, so I think naturally some of it is what they game plan Notre Dame for. And I think they wanted Notre Dame, to have to pass the ball, but
they tried to make Leonard beat him a little bit. Yeah.
But luckily for Notre Dame, is they have a 3-headed monster back there. Just because you take away Riley Leonard doesn't mean you've taken away Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and I would say the fourth little kind of baby head is popping up too with Aeneas Williams. He's becoming someone who's very reliable and dependable, And so it's like, just because you take away one of them doesn't mean you take away Riley Leonard's arm or any of the other running backs that are also really dynamic.
Did you see Jeremiah Love's quote from after the game, by the way, where he was asked about, having a touchdown in the 10 consecutive games. And he said, well, I'm aware of it now. And then he said, I got breakaway speed, track meet after that.
That goes back to what we're like, Army. If Jeremiah Love is pulling away from some of these Power 4 teams, you have to wonder how quickly he can pull away from a team like Army, It just comes down to execution. You just have to execute at a high level on a very clean level too. And just kind of the stuff I talked about too. Against the academies, I feel like the pre-snap penalties are even more of a hyper focus, right? Like it all comes down to staying ahead of the chains, controlling the ball, and finishing possessions. You can't have empty drives. You got to score, and you can't have the mental mistakes that can set you back, because more often than not, the academy teams are super disciplined. Like they don't commit a lot of the penalties, the turnovers, the stupid mental mistakes. Like they are some of the top trained athletes / soldiers that this country has.
Love and Leonard combined for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns against Navy like a month ago. They both averaged over 8 yards per carry against Navy. And, and again, these are two different teams, but at the same time, athletically, physically, they're going to be very, very similar. So like you can talk about the turnovers that Navy committed and how that played a part in the game. It did, but you do also have to credit Notre Dame for capitalizing on that, for taking the ball.
And applying the pressure.
They were very efficient offensively in that game. And I think that we're just going to see more of the same in this. I don't think it's going to be quite as lopsided as the Navy game, but again, I think we're gonna see a fairly comfortable margin for Notre Dame. Don't you? Like, do you disagree with that at all?
No, I think Notre Dame has. I'm actually kind of on the other side of the thought process on this one. I think Navy has more athleticism to kind of keep that score maybe a little bit closer. I think
you think
Notre
Navy
Dame
does.
Yeah, I think Army, if they get down, its floodgates are open. I think that they could potentially lose like 49-0 type of game. Basically.
Oh wow! So you think Army could be worse just because, again, like of the way that they have to operate their offense?
Yeah, like
they're not as dynamic. Okay.
They're just not as dynamic to potentially come back and get you. Because what are they going to do if they're down 21? Line up in shotgun and ask a guy who can barely throw a 15-yard hook route, a comeback route? Like, it's going to be bad news bears at that point, And it's like, well, and then you could also say, well, maybe it won't be as bad because Notre Dame, they'll still be running the ball, the clock will be running, less incompletions, like that sort of stuff. But if Notre Dame gets out to a lead like they did against Navy, it's going to be even worse for a team like Army because they don't have as many ways to come back and move the ball. Essentially, they rely
that's fair because
so heavy on that run.
The quarterback is averaging almost 25 carries per game. Bryson Daly. That's a really good point, actually. So when you're asking him to run all these quarterback ISOs, quarterback pounding, all the pounding that he's already been taking, and that's the majority of their offense. 25 carries a game is him. And now you're behind by a couple of touchdowns. I think that's a great point, actually. That's hardly sustainable to try to come back in that fashion if that happens.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for Army because it's like their formulas for winning are so small. Like they need this specific thing to go right majority of the time, or else they're going to lose. But it's hard to say because it's like obviously their formulas work so far; they're undefeated, right? So it's like. Who am I to say how this game is going to go when they've only won all their games so far?
You were gone when Vince and I were talking about it yesterday in Rapid Fire. Would you have been ticked off if you were Al Golden and Virginia called that timeout at the end of the game to score the touchdown at the end?
Oh, 100%. There was no, especially that's I'm just going to say it. I understand you're still trying to develop guys, but I am not on board for, running a full-fledged – when Notre Dame's got second and third string guys in there on defense and you're already up 4 scores. Like, I guess I just don't understand. I get it. You're not trying to give up, but I don't understand like the going out of your way to try to score points. Like the game is relatively out of hand, I guess.
I mean, Notre Dame put on film the week before that they were, even with their second string offense in there, which I have no problem with. Steve Angeli threw a touchdown pass to Deion Colsey, and Marcus Freeman kept Riley Leonard in against Virginia into the fourth quarter, right? They could have easily pulled him, but they kept him in. So I've got no problem with it. Like I said yesterday, if you don't have a problem with Steve Angeli throwing a late touchdown, to make it 45, I guess, at that point, because the interception made it 52. The pick six by Talich made it 52. If you don't have a problem with that, I can't have a problem with Virginia. They've got timeouts at their disposal, and they're trying to play it too. They're trying to, like, they've got 2 tough games coming up over the next couple of weeks. So I think that just from a mental standpoint, I don't think that he could afford to back down. They're still trying to become bowl eligible and all that.
No, I completely understand.
I didn't have a problem with it. Like if I'm Al Golden, again, like there's a difference. If I'm Al Golden and I'm strictly the defensive coordinator, I would be. It's like, come on, are you kidding me? They're calling freaking.
Well, yeah, and that's. I guess I'm like means and methods. Like
right.
I don't need a team like say they're down. What is it, 28, and there's like 6 minutes left on the clock, and they're just airing this thing out consistently, incomplete. Now we're punting, you know what I mean? It's just like no game. But then also too, like I get running your offense, but like don't be going for it on 4th and 10, and don't call timeouts or kick a field goal with 10 seconds left just to get some points on the board. Like the ticket, that's the stuff where I'm like, are we just trying to put points on the board? Or are we actually trying to develop our offense? And
like Syracuse kicking the field goal the last time Notre Dame was at Yankee Stadium to avoid the shutout.
Right. That's what I mean. So just how you go about it, right? Are you really trying to work on things, or are you just trying to put some points on the board to make yourself feel better at the end of the day?
Yeah. I get that perspective.
But it's like, it's hard for me to be in those shoes because I know I'm petty, and if I was getting blown out by a coach, I would be like, F you, I'm trying to find a way to score, no matter what. So it's like,
right.
It's a hard line for me to just sit up here and be like, you know what, I do this because I'm an extremely competitive and petty person at the end of the day. And so if I could get a jab at you, more than likely I'm going to get a jab at you.
DK's calling you a whiner. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, Play to the final whistle. Play till there's no time left on the clock. So I've got no problem with it either way. Again, like it might just tick me off even more, and you do kind of open yourself up to that kind of stuff when that happens. But all right, I'm going to see if I can work my way through some more of this continued congestion that I've got. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Fill in the blank. Notre Dame scheduling a home and home with Texas in 2028 and 2029 is blank.
It's electric, y'all. I love when Notre Dame plays these home and home games against, these big time opponents. Like those are the games I remember the most growing up, like the home and homes with Tennessee, the home and homes with UCLA. They've done Georgia in the past. They've obviously done Texas in the past. I know they have Alabama coming up in the near. Like I think those are great because one, you get to expose your fan base and another fan base to South Bend and, potentially, like when Notre Dame plays Alabama, Tuscaloosa, like when's the last time Notre Dame was in Tuscaloosa, right? So like that's a cool aspect of things of just teams that don't naturally play each other much, getting that exposure and these different kind of, fan bases essentially. And then also, what it does for your schedule. It's a great, boost to see if you win. It's obviously going to be a great resume builder. And then if you lose, it's kind of like a midterm exam. You see where the state of your program is at, maybe that season, maybe it's a 2-year window, 3-year window. You have a better understanding of how you stack up nationally outside of your bubble when you play more of these games. So I love these games. I know Notre Dame plays really well in these games too. I feel like they win a lot of close ones. They lose a couple of the close ones, but they're always really good games. So I look forward to them.
Yeah, the last time they played, it was the road team actually won both meetings, if you remember that, 2015 and 2016. Notre Dame won down there, and then Texas came up here the next year, early in that horrid 2016 season. TD4ND was asking when they'll be. Both games are slated for September, according to what I see on the future Notre Dame football schedules. But it's very interesting, like you talk about beefing up your schedule, because 2028, Texas and Arkansas are home games. They're also going to have Clemson and Miami that season. So this is 4 years down the road. What anyone's going to look like 4 years from now, it can change, obviously, quite a bit. I do like what Stymie is saying about, recruiting Texas to be able to make those trips. You went down to A&M this year. You're going to go to Texas. And at some point, Notre Dame will make a trip, down to Dallas to play SMU as well. But 2029, Notre Dame hosts Alabama and goes to Texas in the same season. They'll also have Florida State on the schedule, depending on what Florida State is. Yeah, and then you look at 2030. Vince and I were talking yesterday. I couldn't remember what years, but you remember a couple years back, they announced that Notre Dame and Indiana are going to play a home and home. And that's going to be in 2030 and 2031. Notre Dame will have Indiana at home in 2030 and go to Alabama that season. They'll also host Florida State that season. How about this for a 2031 schedule? Indiana, they're at Indiana, Clemson, they host Florida, and they also play Miami in 2031.
That's what I mean. Like, as a fan, this is what you should want. These big market, big matchup games. I think that these are, as a fan and kind of where college football is progressing with kind of these mega conferences, is you want these big kind of matchups, right? And I think Notre Dame is kind of following the trend of where these mega conferences are going and adding sort of more of those games onto their schedule. And, it's funny because it's like, you think, 2028, 2029. It's like, well, dang, we're almost into 2025 already. Like, that's right around the corner. You know what I mean? It's like, when I hear those years, I'm like, what's it matter? Like, that's 10 years from now. But like they're getting closer and closer. So I like this transition kind of to where the schedule is headed. And I think it does Notre Dame favors as well, too, as long as they win these games. I think it does well nationally of, okay, Notre Dame is playing SEC schools more consistently, or they're playing, some Big Ten schools more consistently. I think that does more for the crowd of, well, Notre Dame is independent. They don't play anyone, da-da-da-da-da. So I just think it's a kind of a win-win. Unless they just start losing all these games, then it's like, then that becomes an issue. But I don't forecast that happening.
No, I mean, that's, because again, like if anyone's complaining about this year's schedule, and I mean, obviously there's from a marquee standpoint, there's reason, and even strength of schedule and that whole thing. But, again, like 2028, Texas, who knows what Arkansas is going to be, but Clemson and Miami. I mean, you've got three teams that have at least at some point, three opponents, and then Notre Dame being the fourth, that are all college football playoff conversation teams, and then obviously Indiana, Alabama, Florida State, Florida, Miami, on, Clemson again on down the line. So it's like these schedules are not going to be lacking over the next few years.
No,
that's for sure. Yep. And, we'll probably get outcry the other way. Why are they scheduling so tough? But hey, people want to play Notre Dame, like give it to Texas as well. They're in the SEC, and
it's a big out of conference game. They don't have to play that game.
Absolutely.
Look at majority of those teams out of conference schedules, and you'll respect a team more like Texas for out of Notre Dame.
Yep. So Notre Dame travels to New York to play Army, of course, this week, and then they fly to the other side of the country to finish the season next week against Southern Cal. Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about mitigating that travel.
Yeah, we've known, this kind of timeline for quite a while. So you got to make certain accommodations when you get back at 3 or 4 in the morning. Made some changes in the schedule for Sunday. There's their day off, but Monday, what we're going to do on Monday, post Army. And then it's a unique week, USC week, because it's Thanksgiving break. And so Tuesday will be a Tuesday, but We kind of made some modifications in terms of sleep and things like that for Wednesday through Saturday. And so this has been in the plans for a while. We got a great sports performance team that we meet every week, but have really thought about this for quite a while.
Been thinking about it for quite a while. Scale of 1 to 10. What's your concern going from New York to California this week and then next week, factoring in what's on the line for the Irish?
I would say a 2 out of 10. And the only reason I'm giving it a 2 is because I think more or less people like broadcasters, commentators, podcasters, I think they'll try to maybe make this into a talking point, right? And then it's like that becomes a distraction potentially for their players because they're like, oh, like they start kind of thinking about it a little bit. But if that doesn't creep in, then it's really no big deal. And I think the big thing that Marcus Freeman talked about that helps them in this situation is the Thanksgiving break, because Notre Dame football doesn't have to worry about anything but football that week. They don't have to go to class.
Sleep. Yep.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about, homework, all of that stuff. It's more or less it's football, and they're going to tell you when you're outside of football probably what you should be doing. There'll be a lot of like team dinners, you know what I mean? Kind of like I'm assuming kind of like a holiday dinner too. So it's like there's a lot of different things that go into it. And luckily for Marcus Freeman, is like he has a staff whose job is dedicated to probably thinking about this the entire season, right? Like someone's sole job was probably thinking about this 2-week window and what is the most efficient travel plan between, New York, LA, practice, and all those things. So I don't think it's a big deal. All these kids are young too, at the end of the day, right? Like some of these kids can go to bed at 4 a.m. and get up at 8 a.m. and, just go about their day. And I'm not saying that's what you want to do the night before a game, right? Because you still want to get your rest and stuff. But, this isn't quite, I think, as big of a deal as what people often think it is.
No, I mean, all of these things, whether it was last year going to and from Ireland or all the offseason talk about the heat in Texas. And it's like all us old people, who, just, want to find things to worry about.
Or things that would maybe affect y'all, right? Because and I'm not saying y'all as in like you're an old person, but like older people, it's like the travel and like that stuff, it affects them more because they're older.
Right. Look, like anytime that I think about this kind of, like the travel, and I remember bringing this up before the season as well, about that when we were talking about the Texas heat and like everyone was so focused on the Texas heat. The 2018 season, Notre Dame went to San Diego to play Navy. The next week, they played Northwestern in Chicago. Then the week after that, they hosted Florida State. Then they went to New York, out to Yankee Stadium to play that Syracuse game. And then they followed that the following week, same deal, out in Los Angeles against USC. That was a 5-week stretch, 2018. They ran the gamut, and they played in the college football playoff. They won those games by an average of 20 points. And I do kind of find it fitting that at the end of that 5-week stretch, it's the exact same scenario. You're going to Yankee Stadium one week, you're going to LA the next. Now, that game at USC was a 1-touchdown game. That was the closest of any of those games, but that's been the case when Notre Dame has tried to finish off the season, whether it was in 2012, remember, to get to the BCS championship game, or that 2018 season going out there to get into the college football playoff. USC has put up a fight at the end of the season. So I expect them to do the same this year, but I don't expect just because you're going from New York one week to LA the next week that it's going to be an issue. I think they'll be just fine as far as that's concerned.
So you kind of teased and dabbled into that USC talk a little bit. I am more scared, and we'll save this for next week, but I am more scared about USC than I was a few weeks ago. They have a new quarterback. He adds a new threat.
Offense looked pretty good. Yeah.
Offense looked good. Their defense is much better than what it's been in the past. And quite honestly, it's a rivalry game. And USC has nothing to lose, and Notre Dame will have everything. Everything will be on the line for Notre Dame, right? And what better way for USC to end their season than to ruin their rivals' dreams potentially of making the playoffs? So that game, I'm already getting nervous thinking about it, to be honest with you. But luckily for us, we have to worry about Navy, and Navy first.
Actually, Army and Army first.
Army. Say I get my academies mixed. Good thing I'm not Marcus Freeman. He's not got them mixed up.
Stymie, they still have not announced the game time for USC. We should probably get that Sunday at some point, I would imagine, is when they'll announce it. Be curious. I mean, in all likelihood, it's probably going to be 7 or 7:30 Eastern time. That's usually the way it turns out for for when Notre Dame plays, because even last year when it was crappy Stanford, right? So thank you, TD4ND. I mean, it hasn't been that bad. It's just like get a little sinus drainage every now and then, and it's just kind of crud trying to talk. And it's like I go all day and don't do that much talking, and then I get on here and I try to talk, and obviously it kind of affects it a little bit more. And I guess it's good, just kind of keep me warmed up for this weekend when I go out to California to do the game. So Mitch Jeter kicked 4 extra points for the Irish against Virginia last weekend, but Marcello Diomede and Zach Yoakum each attempted and missed a field goal as Jeter continues to recover from his hip injury. Marcus Freeman kind of explains where they were with Jeter in that game.
After warm-ups, we thought his line was around the 42, meaning a 42-yarder was probably the line for this game. And we had him kick the extra points, and then, we didn't want to kick the 54-yarder with him because we thought that was a little bit out of his range right now. And so at halftime, we just made the decision up 28-0 to say, okay, let's rest him for the second half and get him ready, hopefully, for this week and extend that line a little bit longer to where he was early in the year. And so he's not full as he was to start the season, full go as he was to start the season, but he's going to be available to kick. We just got to continue to see where that line is for Mitch Jeter.
All right, got to figure out where the line is for Mitch Jeter. Scale of 1 to 10. What's your concern with this kicking situation right now?
Yeah, I would actually put this at kind of like a 6 or 7 out of 10, kind of get into that lukewarm area because, as Notre Dame gets into what we hope the playoffs and playoff type games, every point is going to matter. These games can be decided by a point. They can be decided by a field goal. They can be decided by 4 points. That's a field goal, an extra point. I guess what I'm saying is every point matters the more that these games are intensified. Just think about the Texas A&M game, right? At the beginning of the season, Notre Dame hit some big field goals early in that game that came back and helped them. So that's what I am concerned with now. I don't see it being a problem maybe against Army and potentially USC, but as the competition stiffens, I think Notre Dame needs to button up these kicking issues because the last thing you want to do is lose a game by 1 point or a field goal when you've missed a field goal or an extra point. And to be honest with you, I didn't know that was the kicking dynamic this past weekend. Maybe I was just completely oblivious, but I didn't realize they used him only for the extra points and then let 2 of the other guys go on these longer field goal attempts. So
I wasn't as aware when I was because I was watching on the computer, like part of it in a gym, part of it on a bus when I was out there at the basketball game, but then coming back, kind of finishing off, I was, like second half. It's like, why isn't Jeter in there? He kicked all the extra points in the first half. Diomede attempted, it was not a short field goal. It was a 54-yarder, so it's not like it was a chip shot. That's a long one. But the Yoakum kick, 36 yards, you got to make a 36-yarder.
You got to make it.
If you're on scholarship on a power forward football team, you got to make a 36-yarder.
That's a perfect segue. Did you see the game day clip this past weekend with Pat McAfee and the whole kicking?
I did. I meant to bring
how
that up.
How the girl won it, and then he was like, I can make that kick for you. That kid drilled it flush from 33. If that guy can hit it in some tennis shoes.
They split it. McAfee kept upping it because originally it was going to be $100,000 they were going to split, right?
No, actually it was going to be 75, and then he upped it to 100. And then right before the kick, I think he felt the confidence of this kid and was like, you know what?
400,000.
400,000. So he gave 400,000 to Hurricane Relief and gave 200,000 to the kid who made it, and then the girl that he split it with. So he gave away $800,000 total. And I was watching the bit from his show. That comes out of his pocket. It's not sponsored by anyone. That's why he's able to give, that amount of money away and kind of, it's his own segment essentially, right? Like that, he can do whatever he wants with it because he's the one giving the money away. So it was electric. But if that kid can drill that, he could have made that from 45 right down the middle, right? So if that kid can make it in some tennis shoes.
The kid was from Indiana too. He drove out there from Indiana.
Fishers, right? So like,
and then did you see the thing that he posted? Like he had gone to like a McAfee kicking camp or something when he was a kid, and the photo that he had on his social media was a picture of him when he was like 9 or 10 or something like that, and McAfee in the background. That was pretty cool. Fishers, Indiana.
I got goosebumps because I watched it. I always try to watch game day live as much as I can. I usually catch like the last few hours for sure, or the last couple hours, and man, I got goosebumps watching it. Like it was watching, and then just seeing how everyone reacted too. You know, it's just like everyone just went nuts, and it was just like this perfect buildup. But at the end of the day, if we got kids on the street that can make a 33-yard field goal, you can't tell me that Yoakum should be missing as bad as he did. It's not like he missed just barely or anything. Like he missed bad.
I mean, look, you know, everybody remember last year when Brandon Aubrey, you know, jumped on the scene. Everyone was like, why weren't they over there scouting this guy when he was playing soccer at Notre Dame? And it's like, if that's my situation with the kickers right now, I'm over there talking, you know, to some soccer players. You know,
I know. Like at what point? Because these games are going to become very, very like every point matters, and
right.
with where these games are going to be going.
A 36-yard field goal, you're at the 29-yard line. You got to make that kick. I don't care who you are. You're at the 29-yard line. You got to make it. So it's a 7 for me. It's fairly concerning. You know, like you're 2 wins away from being in the college football playoff. You know, again, like you can't take either of these teams for granted this week or, you know, these next 2 weeks. But, you know, like, so if it like the Army game should not come down to a field goal. There's always a chance that it could. There's a better chance that the USC game on the road is going to come down to a field goal. You got to get this figured out. It's pretty concerning. So I might even bump mine up to an 8. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame great Golden Tate called himself the Yak King on Good Morning Football today for his time in Detroit with Matthew Stafford. When you think of Tate, you think of blank.
I think of the fade king or the fade guy, just a guy who consistently was running fades on defenses, you know, like taking the top off, and especially kind of, you know, early on in his career when he wasn't kind of, you know, the primary receiver. And then I know we've talked about this before. I just think about his ability to run after the catch. Obviously that's what, you know, his basically his breakaway speed, right? Like not even necessarily like yards after the catch, because that naturally, but like his ability to break away, like guys weren't catching him. And then obviously the awesome celebration where he jumped into the Michigan State band. That always is at the top of my list. That's
literally the first thing I think, like when you think of Golden Tate, is, you know, him flopping into the Michigan State band. And ESPN did that great article commemorating that earlier this season. That's literally the first thing, you know, like me personally, like, you know, one of the first things that I think about is he used to sit behind me on the baseball bus when we'd be on road trips, you know. And then like when we went to the BCS championship game, I actually saw him outside the stadium going in. It's like, oh, totally random. Here comes Golden Tate running around a corner, you know. But like in terms of the NFL, I just, you know, just like freaky fast. And I think of just like a lot more of the diving kind of stuff, you know, like very springy, diving into the end zone, you know, just doing kind of crazy athletic type things. Like Yak was not the first thing that I would have thought of, but obviously, you know, he liked the way Matt Stafford throwing the ball there in Detroit.
He had very, you know, he was a shorter, more stout guy, right? Like he wasn't this tall. Like when you think of him, you think of like a slot wide receiver, kind of how he's built, right?
He was a slot receiver, yeah.
And so, but the thing that stuck out to me when he was playing baseball and when he was playing, like his legs were so disproportional, just how big they were. But that's where all of his speed and athleticism came from, was, you know, strong hamstrings, strong, like he had massive legs, but that would allowed him to be so, you know, quick twitchy, to be able to have that breakaway speed, to do the diving into the end zone and kind of the stuff that you were talking about. So, you know, I don't necessarily think of the Yak. I just think of more or less his ability, his natural athletic ability once the ball was in his hands, to get the first down, to get the touchdown. Like, he had so many different ways about going to getting it, but it was centered around just his overall speed and athleticism. And I was spoiled too because I got to hang around with him at Notre Dame baseball. So like
That's true.
Pretty cool as well. He's a super nice guy. Always was, I'm sure I asked him for at least 3 or 4 autographs during my time.
Probably so. I think you got some pictures stashed away someplace. One of the many athlete celebrities that Jesse has jumped in the photo with. Okay, I'm going to give you the 4 best opponents that 4 different Big Ten teams have either played or will play this season. 3 of these teams are college football playoff contenders, and the other is far from being a college football playoff contender. I want you to see if you can guess the one that is not in college football playoff contention. Okay. And I'm actually going to have to go back and grab my master here in a master sheet here in a second, because I've got Team A, Team B, Team C, Team D. I need to find the one that actually, says which team is which. So
you
Team
find
A,
the answer key.
Yes, there you go. Team A opponent. The top 4 opponents are Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, and Washington. Team B, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana. Team C, Ohio State, Wisconsin, USC, Illinois. And Team D, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. So which of those is not a college football playoff contender?
It's definitely got to be Team D.
Do you have any idea who Team D is?
I want to say it's Michigan.
No.
Is it Illinois?
No.
Dang. Michigan didn't play Penn State. That's the only one that's got me crossed up. Who is Team D?
Team D, I found the answer key just in time. I knew who Team D was because this was basically the genesis of, how I came up with this question when I saw their schedule and started comparing it to some of these other playoff contenders. Team D, again, plays Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana. That team is Purdue. The team that had to play the toughest conference schedule, not to mention the fact that they played Notre Dame this season. Purdue got stuck with a tougher conference schedule than either Oregon, Ohio State, or Penn State, the other 3 teams.
Yeah, it's brutal because like you look
they
at
essentially got to be everybody's whipping boy, so that these other so that the competitive teams now in everybody's, in defense, obviously nobody expected Indiana to be, what they were this year, but
or
still,
Michigan being as bad as they were.
Right, but still Purdue had to play Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. Penn State, everybody's talked about Penn State's schedule, obviously. Ohio State, Wisconsin, USC, Illinois. Their 4 toughest games compared to Purdue playing Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana.
And Notre Dame.
And but that's out of conference. But
yeah.
Ohio State played Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, Indiana. Of course, Indiana coming up this week. And Oregon's toughest, their schedule has not been overly brutal either. Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, Washington. Of course, they did play Boise State, out of conference. But Oregon's schedule, not exactly brutal either when you sit and look at it.
Agree. And that's kind of, to me, everyone wants to now get into, this strength of schedule war with everyone. And it's like, well, everyone's got blemishes, right? And just because you play in this conference doesn't mean that conference one is particularly good. And now when you have 20 teams in a conference, you're not going to play. The chances of playing all the good teams and so if you're in the Big Ten, that's what sucks is it's just going to be a roll of the dice every year because you don't know what teams are going to be maybe the surprise teams like Indiana or the surprise teams like Michigan who aren't nearly as good and supposed to be good. So it's like there's just so much more room for variety or deviation when you add so many teams to a conference and not every team can play each other, right? So it's like this is what I think is naturally going to happen is any given year, one year you could have the exact schedule and it could be, a top 20 schedule. And then the next year could be the same exact schedule and it's a bottom 20 schedule.
Right.
That's the part it's just going to be a year by year.
Florida State, as an example of, like if you were playing Florida State last year, it would have been a completely different story than playing Florida State this year. And, vice versa with a team like Indiana, obviously, and part of this as well. I don't know if you remember us talking about this back when, the Big Ten, when these Pac-12 teams, Oregon and Washington, were added to the Big Ten, obviously, along with USC and UCLA, because of the fact that not everyone was going to play everyone every year. They asked each school in the Big Ten, what games would you like to protect? Like which games mean the most to you that you want to make sure that you're playing every year? So like, yeah, I think they got to turn in up to 3 that they wanted to protect. It was at least 2. I can't remember if it was 3 or not. Penn State chose nobody. Penn State was like, nah, we're good. We don't need any rivalries protected. And I think when you look at Penn State's schedule, it shows that, whereas like Ohio State, now again, Michigan was a national champion last year. They're a 500 team this year, but Michigan was obviously going to protect Ohio State and vice versa, and like Purdue, the 2 games that they wanted protected Illinois and Indiana. And I didn't even mention that, Purdue did have to play Illinois this year, along with those other teams that I mentioned. Well, Illinois and Indiana, Illinois was at least ranked for a while, and Indiana is a top 5 team right now. So, that kind of plays into it as well.
Did you and Vince ever talk about the Cignetti and IU extension? Because
we talked about it yesterday. Yeah.
Me personally, good for Cignetti, but I don't know how you can empty the bank on a guy with no top 25 wins and the 100th ranked schedule. I just felt a little premature. I know the guy's a winner and he has a great track record and he's doing well season 1, but I feel like if you're IU, and maybe that's good on IU football, they haven't been good. Maybe they feel like they've hit the jackpot and they want to keep this guy as long as possible and be as good at football for as long as possible. But if I'm Cignetti, I feel like I robbed the bank because, again, I don't have a top 25 win and I have the 100 strength of schedule. And again,
he hasn't even finished a full season.
Right.
He's playing Ohio State this week. Like, what if that whole thing blows up? And then if you're Indiana, how you feeling?
49-7 or something this week.
Indiana probably wanted to get it done before they played Ohio State. So he didn't try to up the ante on them,
That's true.
But Vince and I were talking yesterday, like he doesn't get to bring a third of his team from James Madison with him next year, like he did this year, to bring his culture with him. Now he can still go out in the transfer portal and he'll be able to find some guys in the portal. It's still impressive that he did it, but he brought very specific guys with him from James Madison and essentially brought a culture with him, set his culture at Indiana. It's going to be different every year going forward now. And like you said, no top 25 wins, bottom feeder schedule. They haven't even finished a full season yet. Good for him. He got the money, but like I said yesterday, Mel Tucker, Charlie Weiss, 2 examples of why you don't do it.
Yeah. I was just curious. I was hoping maybe we're along the same thought process, but like, man, I'd love to be Cignetti right now. He probably had he's on cloud 9. He's undefeated and just got paid the most money he's ever gotten in his whole career. So
absolutely. He was at James Madison a year ago. Like, think about that. Okay. So after that disgrace of a football game last night, do you buy or sell that it's time for the Cowboys to just play Trey Lance at quarterback?
I thought about this for a good amount today, and one of my friends asked me this, and I don't think they played too horribly last night, to be honest with you. I know the final score was 34-10, but that game could have easily been 20-16 going into the fourth quarter. It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as I think what it was. And I don't
look, Cooper Rush is a career backup. They traded a 4th-round draft pick to get Trey Lance, and he's going to be a free agent after this season. Fisher cut bait. Like, you gave up big draft capital to get him. So that's my case. I don't think I have to say much more. Like, this season is now, if you're tanking for draft picks, keep playing Cooper Rush. But if you want to actually see what you've got in Trey Lance after you gave up a 4th-round draft pick for him last year, he needs to play the rest of the season, because there's nothing to play for the rest of this season unless you're playing for the highest draft pick you can get next year.
So, yeah, I was getting into that a little bit.
I cut you off because I was tired of your BS. I don't want to hear your freaking rose-colored glasses about, oh, things considered, they actually played pretty well. No, they didn't.
They didn't play bad last night. They really didn't. They missed a field goal, had another field goal taken off the board. That game, again, Houston got 2 late touchdowns on some cheap stuff.
Great point, Rabid Chihuahua. Rabid, now have the Cowboys have lost every home game this season, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect them to win anything now. They're on their backup quarterback, but Cooper Rush didn't play bad, but you know what you're getting with Cooper Rush. It's time to play Trey Lance. This is what you talked about. You gave up draft capital.
I love those ant killers, man.
You know Cooper Rush.
Like, those were awesome throws, man. I was just loving that.
You know what Cooper Rush can be. Just let Trey Lance go out there.
Look, the Giants are going to DeVito, right? The Giants are going to DeVito. If the Giants can go to DeVito, the Cowboys can go to Lance. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
It's okay.
I'm over this team, man. And I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this, Jesse. I tried, I went into the offseason. You know how pissed off I was about those idiots down there and Mike McCarthy specifically after that complete no-show in that playoff game last year. I didn't want to talk about him for a long time. And, of course, the season came back around, and it's like, okay, I got built back up, even though they did nothing the whole offseason. But I actually believe that they could be somewhat competitive. If Mike McCarthy, if somehow Jerry Jones decides to keep Mike McCarthy around for another year, I am done. I am done until Mike McCarthy.
There's a lot of people think that he should just fire him now, but he's all in this.
I don't know what that accomplishes, because there's no one internally who's going to solve anything.
Yeah, but Jerry's all in this phase of, I've fired coaches in the season before, and I'm just not going to do that anymore. It's just, but for why? Just show everyone where you stand. And there's just got to be something where they're going to put their foot in the ground and say things are going to be different, because right now they're just doing the same old stuff over and over again. So just cut bait and let everyone know that the rebuild is going on now.
Traded a 4th-round pick that they could have drafted a running back with this year, by the way. Traded a 4th-round pick for a guy who's just standing over there on the sideline behind Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush doesn't have a future in the NFL. He's a career backup. All right, moving on.
But then what makes it more infuriating is they just signed Dak too. So why'd you give up a 4th-round pick if you're going to give Dak all that money? It feels like, again, they're going to lose out on that pick for nothing. Trey Lance is going to be for nothing.
That's my point. So do you, there's like Belichick, where there's smoke, there's fire, there's talk about that. Do you think, put aside whether or not Bill Belichick is probably, at the very least, he's going to interview with probably 3 different teams once the season is over.
He wants to coach.
Do you think Belichick would make a difference if Jerry Jones hired him?
Yes. I've said this before. Regardless of how much you think Jerry Jones is in control, on a day-to-day, it would still be Bill Belichick's team, and at least they would be disciplined. They would have some sense of toughness around them. In a reality check, guys wouldn't be showing up late to meetings. Guys wouldn't be showing up. Bill Belichick will send your ass home if you do that stuff, right? Like you can't practice, you can't play. Just the accountability, the discipline, a culture reset. Again, no matter who's in charge in the top, you could still have a tough coach down in the trenches with you. So I do think a lot of stuff, and I think that they would get some of that harsh reality. No more coddling, no more you're a Dallas Cowboy, you get all the perks and benefits. I think Bill Belichick would make things more earned at the end of the day. Things are going to be earned around here. You're not just going to be given things because you're a Dallas Cowboy. And I told you earlier today, I didn't even watch the main broadcast last night because I wanted to specifically – Bill Belichick does the first half with the Manning cast every week now. I wanted to hear what he would say about the Cowboys, if it felt like there was inflection in his voice when talking about the Cowboys, if it was something that he sounded, maybe an opportunity about. And the stuff that he talked about is, the lack of not using Turpin when they're most explosive players. He's like, that's the best returner in the game. Him talking about Aubrey being one of the best kickers in the game. Stuff that Bill Belichick would utilize, right? Because that's the type of coach that he is. And so, basically what he boiled it down to is they don't have a run game. And if you don't have a run game, how can you have a pass game, right? And just their overall horrible defense. And those are things that I feel like are the staple or the backbone of Bill Belichick. Stuff that even when things are at their worst, I don't think that they could be like it wouldn't be as bad as what we're seeing right now.
Excuse me. I agree with all that. DK says Belichick wouldn't go to Dallas. I disagree
don't know.
with that. Here's the reason he would go to Dallas. Don Shula has 328 career wins. Bill Belichick has 302. He wants to catch Don Shula. That's why he wants to coach again.
About 3 years, probably, if roughly.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years if you have a couple, really successful seasons. And look, I never would have thought that Bill Parcells would coach for Jerry Jones, and it lasted 3 years, something like that. Like, I think for all the longer Belichick is going to coach anyway, I think that he could make obviously there's going to have to be concessions that he would have to make, in terms of, input with personnel and those kind of things. Those things, but I think that those are concessions he's going to have to make anywhere that he goes. It's obviously going to be different in Dallas with all the things that you have to put up with the owner and all that stuff, but for the most part there's a roster that's in place. They just need to fill some key holes. So I think that he would be successful. Yes, Jesse. My
ding 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 bell would be that Belichick doesn't want a complete rebuild. He doesn't have time for a complete rebuild. Taking a team like a completely probably poverty kind of franchise or a team that he wants to win now, right? And Dallas still has a lot of meat on the bone in terms of franchise quarterback, franchise wide receiver, franchise defensive end, 2 high-end corners, right? Like some good quality young talent on the offense. Like there's a lot of meat on that bone. Good kicker, good kick returner. They just need to, like you were saying, fill some of those voids and just overall better coaching. And so I do think that if you're Bill Belichick and you actually want a legitimate shot at having another chance at a Super Bowl, being in a big market, like the Cowboys, and having, a lot of roster talent, Dallas makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. And, the best part of it is if they stink really bad this year, Buddy gets a top 10 pick at the worst, maybe even a top 5 pick with already what's all the meat that's on the bone.
Exactly. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up with that. We went a little bit longer than I even thought. I've got something else I've got to do here in a little bit. In the meantime, I got Vince texting me, so I got to talk to you before you get out of here when you wrap up as well. Yeah, Sly Fox said, tell Vince to leave you alone. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly
I could see it in your face. You were already getting stressed about whatever you're going to talk to me about.
Uh-huh. All right, hit the like button before you leave. Appreciate you as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.